Right off the jump, this is by no means a serious proposal. It's just a thought exercise to see what a 40-team NFL and with it an 18-game schedule would look like. We're going to go through who the 8 expansion teams would be, what their nickname and logo could be, and how divisions would be realigned to make a little more geographic sense. We'll keep the same division structure, just that each division will now have 5 teams. With the extra teams and the extra game on the schedule, the first thing we would propose is that rosters are expanded to 60 players, with a 53-man active roster on game day, and a small reduction from 16 to 15 for practice squads, giving each team 75 players. Preseason would probably be 2 games, not something we gave a whole lot of thought to. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to check out these new teams in alphabetical order. First off, we're going to have the Albuquerque Pumas. Albuquerque, of course, is in New Mexico. The metro area, not quite a million, but 923,630 makes for a nice number. Now, many Cougars are native to the state of New Mexico, and we weren't so high on calling the team the Tarantulas. With slightly higher than half the population being of Hispanic or Latino descent, we figured we would honor that by using the Latin American term, Puma. As far as the logo goes, pretty simple. This is a Puma. I'm no artist by any means. I didn't really do a whole lot of adjusting to what I could find that was already out there. I'm sure a good artist could give this a better rendering. The Pumas will be placed in the AFC West. Up next will be the Oklahoma City Highlanders from the state of Oklahoma. This metro area is pushing close to 1.5 million people. Oklahoma does have a decent-sized Scottish population, and truth be told, I kind of just wanted to name one of these teams the Highlanders. The logo here is pretty simple, perhaps lacking in some elegance. It's 2 swords crossed over each other with a mountain in the background. The Highlanders will play in the NFC South. Up next will be the Omaha Rounders, situated in the state of Nebraska. This metro area just misses being 1 million with 967,000. Omaha is, of course, the home to the College World Series, and it made some sense that they would want to honor that. Rounders is a game that is closely associated with baseball, so there you go. As far as the logo goes, I was trying to do something clever and creative with this. This is about the best I could have done. It's basically a stylized home plate. There are some pinstripes you might be able to see on the border here, representing a typical baseball uniform, and a very simple Omaha in cursive letters written across the middle. Of all the logos that I'll be displaying here, this will be the one I'd be most comfortable being changed. The Rounders will be playing in the AFC North. Let's now head out about as far west as we can go. This will be the Portland Meadowlarks in the state of Oregon. Portland does have a substantial metro area of over 2.5 million people. Pretty simple on where we got the name here. The meadowlark, specifically the western meadowlark, is the Oregon state bird, and quite frankly, it is a simply gorgeous animal. I'm sure, once again, a much better artist can stylize this logo to make it a little more ferocious, or at least menacing. Chances are that Meadowlark might not be the full name that people use. They might be called the Larks or the Meadows, similar to how the Trailblazers in Portland, incidentally, and the Knickerbockers are hardly ever given that full treatment. Portland would slide right into the AFC West. It's pretty unbelievable that the state of Texas only has 2 NFL teams, so we think it's high time to add a third. This will be the San Antonio Mustangs. San Antonio is one of the biggest cities in the country. Their metro area clears 2.5 million people. Just like the name Highlanders, one of these teams was going to be named Mustangs. San Antonio seemed to be a pretty good match. Plus, horseback riding isn't exactly an unpopular pastime in the city. I gotta admit, I really do like this logo, a simple yet angry looking Mustang. The Mustangs will take their residence in the AFC South. Our 6th team will find itself in a familiar city, St. Louis, Missouri. These are the Foxes, with a metro area pushing 3 million at just over 2.8 million. This one is a little bit of a stretch. Missouri's state horse breed is the Missouri Foxtrotter, but I've always thought that Fox would make for a good team name. I imagine a fox's cunning and craftiness does line up with a city taking its third swing at an NFL team. I do rather like this logo though. It's got a great color scheme and the fox itself does look rather intimidating. St. Louis will be placed in the NFC North. We've got 2 more to go. This team will be the Utah Crystals. They'll take the whole state name, but their home base will be Salt Lake City with a metro area of just over 1.25 million people. Kind of another stretch here. It snows in Utah. Snowflakes are ice crystals. So based on that, we went with the crystal material to get in another purple logo and color scheme. Brilliant, I know. The logo itself is representative of a phoenix, but it somewhat looks like a crown as well. It's a cool looking logo, I went with it. The Crystals will go and play in the NFC West. And our last team here will be the Virginia Pioneers, another team taking on the name of the entire state. Their region is going to be the Hampton Roads, with a metro area of 1.76 million people. Pioneers is a pretty easy name here. This goes all the way back to colonial times and the first permanent English settlement in what is now the modern United States, which of course was in Jamestown, Virginia. Now all of these other logos that I presented to this point, they could be changed, it wouldn't hurt my feelings, but not this one. This one looks great. First of all, it is a picture of a pioneer. He looks quite rugged, and it looks like he's facing down something dangerous. Moreover, the shape of his body takes the shape of a P, which of course would stand for Pioneers. Virginia will be playing in the NFC East. Now that we've introduced the teams, let's take a look at the division, starting with the AFC East. The current configuration is here on the left. The new configuration will keep 3 of these teams. The Dolphins are out. The Bills, Patriots, and Jets are to be joined by the Ravens and the Steelers, keeping that rivalry alive. This will be the only division without an expansion team. Maybe that's unfair, but there's already more teams in the East right now than there are in the West. Them's the breaks. These 4 teams in the AFC North have already seen 2 departures with the Ravens and the Steelers. So the Bengals and Browns will move on, and they will be joined by the Indianapolis Colts, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Omaha Rounders. This may disrupt some of the rivalries the Chiefs have, but this just makes so much more geographic sense. Heading now to the AFC South, the Colts have already departed for the North. The Texans, Jaguars, and Titans will live on to be joined by the Miami Dolphins and the San Antonio Mustangs. This gives us 2 teams from Texas and 2 teams from Florida, making for some very natural rivalries here. Our last AFC division is the West. The Chiefs have departed for the North. The Broncos, Raiders, and Chargers will be joined by 2 expansion teams, the Pumas and the Meadowlarks. We tried our hardest not to do this, but with the East taking on no expansion teams, one division had to take on 2. Every division going forward will have exactly 1 expansion edition. Let's head now to the NFC East. This is going to be controversial for some. The Dallas Cowboys are out. The Giants, Eagles, and Commanders will be joined by the Virginia Pioneers and the Carolina Panthers. Now, if this proves to be too controversial, there's an easy fix that we're going to get to in just a moment. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on the NFC North. This was a piece of cake. All 4 teams remain, simply to be joined by the St. Louis Foxes. The NFC South will maintain 3 of its 4 teams. We saw the Panthers lead this division. They'll be joined by the Dallas Cowboys and the Oklahoma City Highlanders. A Dallas-Oklahoma City rivalry would be great. I do understand that many people would be loath to give up the Cowboys, Eagles, Giants, and Commanders in the same division. So if this could not work out, a simple swap between Dallas and Carolina could easily take place. Our last division is the NFC West, and they're just like the NFC North. They're going to retain all 4 of their teams while adding the expansion Utah Crystals. We're going to see how all of this looks on the map, but before we do that, we want to discuss what the 18-game schedule will look like. and this is it. We're used to seeing every team get a different bye week. We're proposing that changes. We play 7 straight weeks, and these dates correlate to what would be the Sunday of this upcoming 2024 season. So week 1 would begin on Sunday, September 1st. Every team would play every week through week 7. Then the entire NFL would take a bye week. This is borrowing somewhat from professional football/soccer leagues in Europe. They would play 7 straight games again through week 14, take a week off before we come back and finish the last 4 regular season games. Then we would get into the playoffs. With 40 teams in the league, 16 teams would make the playoffs, 8 from each conference. No more bye weeks, going back to the way it was when 4 teams from each conference would make the playoffs. Then there would be a week off after February 2nd. The Super Bowl would be held February 16th, which would line up with something that the NFL wants, a national holiday, as President's Day would be the next day. As for how the schedule itself would be constructed, it'd be very simple. Let's use the San Francisco 49ers as an example. As is always the case, they're going to play each team from their division home and away. That would account now for 8 games. They would then match up with another division from their conference. In this case, it would be the NFC North. They would get 3 home games this season within the conference. That would be against the Bears, Packers, and the Foxes, going on the road to play the Lions and the Vikings. Then they would match up with a team from the other conference. Let's just say, for argument's sake, the AFC South. Because they get 3 home games within the conference, they would only get 2 home games outside the conference. Against, let's say, the Jaguars and the Mustangs, they'd have to travel to face the Texans, the Dolphins, and the Titans. This would rotate year to year. Next season, they would get 2 home games in the conference, 3 home games outside the conference. Now, this does take away a team's finish from the season before as part of the schedule makeup. As it stands right now, 3 of the 17 games are dictated by a team's placement in the standings. I was not fond of doing away with this, but it was the best way I could determine to do 18 games cleanly. If anyone has an idea of how to do that better, I would definitely love to hear it. Here's what the current map of the NFL looks like, with every team placed in its state. States with multiple teams are dispersed as best as possible, attempting to keep it geographically accurate. Here's the map with all 40 teams. Yes, Texas looks wacky, as San Antonio isn't anywhere near that far to the west. We're going to cycle through each division here, showing just how much more geographic sense this all makes. While the NFL division structure isn't nearly as bad as it once was, I mean, for 7 straight seasons, the 49ers played in the NFC West with St. Louis, New Orleans, Atlanta, and Carolina. It could still use some tweaking. Here now are all the teams in the East, North, South, and West, regardless of conference. We reiterate, in the event that it might be inconceivable for Dallas not to be in the NFC East, they can be swapped out with the Panthers. One last map here, showing the current NFL configuration even more accurately based on the team's city, and now what it would look like with all 40 teams. I'd say that filled out pretty nicely. Thank you for making it this far into the video, which we hoped was just a little bit of fun that has exactly 0% chance of ever happening, at least not anytime soon. Please give the video a like, share it around, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Tell me what you thought about all of this. Could 40 NFL teams ever work at some point in the future? Would the teams have to be brought in a little bit at a time? Or is 32 such a perfect number that nobody should ever consider messing with it? Sound off in the comment section below on this or anything else that may be on your mind. Thank you once again for joining us today. And until next time, I hope you have an awesome day.